Hello, and welcome to the San Francisco Opera Guild's opera preview of Gaetano Donizetti's The Elixir of Love, which will actually be the final production of San Francisco Opera's 2023 fall season. Set on the Italian Riviera during the 1950s, director Daniel Slater will whisk audiences away to this updated setting for this delightful and heartwarming 1832 romance with a libretto by Felice Romani. My name is Benjamin Osgood, and I serve on the board of directors for the San Francisco Opera Guild, whose award-winning education programs reach over 64,000 students annually in more than 215 schools. And tonight, I get to welcome back Alexandra Amati as tonight's speaker. Alexandra, how are you tonight? Come stai?
Great. Benissimo.
Benissimo. Nothing better. And how is Knox?
Knox, my cat, is hiding right now, but she might make an appearance. She's doing very well. That's my black cat.
Yeah, we love a cameo. And how's I believe the last time we spoke, you had just relocated to Cambridge, Massachusetts. So
I'm loving it.
You're loving it, huh? It's starting to warm up over there, right?
Well, it was snowing 2 days ago. Today I was not in shorts but clothes. So you know what they say about the Boston weather. If you don't like it, stick around for 5 minutes, it'll change. So that's pretty much it. I love the winter, so I'm waiting for the snow.
Oh, that's great. Well, awesome. Well, we're thrilled to have you back. Thanks for joining us. So I'll give a share Alexandra's bio. She's originally from Naples, Italy, and studied at the University of Pisa with Slavic studies and philology. She's trained at the Conservatory of Music of Lucca under piano and composition, Harvard University with an MA and PhD in musicology. Her scholarly interests include the Italian Renaissance, Italian opera, feminist criticism, and more. She is a professor emerita at the University of San Francisco and a lecturer for many Bay Area organizations, including the San Francisco Symphony, the San Francisco Opera, the San Francisco Bach Choir, the Philharmonia Baroque, and others. Now she's at Harvard University teaching and working as an editor for the operas of J.C. Bach. She continues to serve on many boards, both as a member and as officer and president, including, among others, the Harvard Club of San Francisco, the Harvard Alumni Association, the San Francisco Early Music Society, the San Francisco Bach Choir, the Harvard University Choir, Shared Interest Group, and more. She is an alto profundo, and in her free time, she enjoys dancing Cuban salsa, playing the piano, traveling, knitting, and solving complex jigsaw puzzles, playing with her black cat, reading, and more. What a fun bio. We're thrilled to have you back. Welcome back. And the way that we'll do it is at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. So over the course of the preview, if you think of anything you'd like to ask her, put it in the chat. We'll curate them all, and then we'll get your questions answered when the preview is over. And so with that, I will hand it over to Alexandra for tonight's opera preview. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's so good to be virtually back. Sorry for the lighting. I can't do anything about it. I do not have an aura. And so my plan tonight is I will tell you a little bit about Donizetti, his life and his style, and how he's placed within the bel canto tradition. And then we will watch a few scenes from a production of the Met of Elixir d'Amore from 2017, 2018, with Pretty Yendi in the role of Adina. I love that production. And as we watch them, I will tell you a little bit about what to be listening for. And hopefully that will get all of you to go to the opera and watch it. So I will be sharing my screen with a few slides, and then we'll get to the Met production, which every 10 minutes kicks me out. So you will have to bear with me putting my password in again. But anyway, this is where we're now. So let me tell you a little bit about Gaetano Donizetti. He was born in the northern city of Bergamo in the north of Italy, and he went to study on a full scholarship. It was a pretty poor family at the school established by composer Meyer, even though his last name looks non-Italian. He was actually an Italian composer who actually wrote some amazing works, though I've never seen them staged. And then he went to study in Bologna, which was a pretty prestigious school. He married a woman named Virginia Vasselli, but she died at age 29 of cholera. And all of their three children also were either stillborn or died in infancy, which may or may not have any kind of relationship with the fact that he himself had syphilis. And that is a pretty bad disease. It brought him, it basically melts your brain. And so we'll talk more at the end of the slide about the fact that he suffered from insanity due to that. He was extremely prolific. Now, I will let you do the math, but he composed 73 operas in 28 years. So you know how people say that Rossini was really quick because he composed the Barber of Seville in like 3 weeks or something. Well, Donizetti would have thought that Rossini was a slow poke. I would like to open a parenthesis here, which is that up to the Romanticism, composers, as well as, to a certain extent, writers, considered their work a craft more than an art. They were very pragmatic about it. So, for example, Donizetti gets commissioned to write 5 operas a year for the Naples San Carlo Theater. That was a contract that he actually had. And he considered each of those as his job. He just had to compose something that was good enough, obviously. But then the work was not an expression of who he was as a person. That will come later. So with Romantics, the idea of a work of art, like Beethoven's last symphonies, for example, they were really an expression, a representation of who the person was as an artist. And so they were not to be tinkered with to start with, and they were the work with a capital W. For Rossini and Donizetti and people before, it was much more pragmatic. So I composed that for Naples. They want to do it in Venice, and instead of a bass, they have a tenor. I'll write new arias. I don't care. So it was not a reflection of who they were. And so these works were regularly tinkered with, and there were things added and removed, and the composers didn't think any less of it, which is also the reason that they could compose so many and so fast, because it wasn't like when, for example, Bellini, who's the first really romantic composer in the world of opera, every opera of Bellini was a reflection of who Bellini was. So he worked on them for years, a long time. And so they were, once they came out, that was it. That was the work. That was not the case with Donizetti, obviously. That's how prolific he was. His first international success came in 1830 with Anna Bolena. To give you a little bit of context, the first opera that Verdi had successful was 12 years later. So to give you an idea of the timing. And in 1832, he broke his contract with Naples because in part, it forced him to only compose for Naples. But also, it was like churning out sausages, basically. So he broke the contract, though he will still compose for Naples. And that very same year, he composed Elixir d'Amore for Milan, for a theater in Milan, and not La Scala. Then in 1835, he went to Paris. He had been invited by Rossini to give his Marino Faliero in Paris. And then that very same year later, he returned to Naples for Lucia di Lammermoor, which was a great success, with the famous mad scene. In 1843, he composed probably the greatest comic masterpiece, Don Pasquale. And then by then, his syphilis was really raging. And so his health was deteriorating really quickly. And he had quite a few embarrassing moments. There was a lot of gossip going around about his lapses and his uncontrollable excesses. And so eventually he was put in a sanatorium in Paris where he spent 17 months, and then he returned to Bergamo, to his hometown, to die at age 51. Actually, he hadn't turned 51 yet. A pretty sad story, actually, but that's what syphilis did to people. Now, the next slide is not intended to scare you, but to give you an idea, these are the operas that he composed, plus one that was never performed, and 5 second versions. So the ones in red are sort of often performed, but most of the others are never heard. San Francisco did Roberto de Vereux, of course, a few years ago, and sometimes, this is the French version of Lucia di Lammermoor. And then Linda di Chamonix is sometimes performed, Maria di Rohan. I have seen some theaters perform one or the other of these, but very rarely. Most of them are forgotten. So let's talk about his style. And these are photos from the San Francisco previous production. Today, this production now is an Italian Riviera, very colorful, very cheerful. So his early style was more in the vein of Rossini. Rossini was a product of the classical period. And later on, we'll get to that, he's a transitional kind of figure between Rossini and Bellini. Actually, I'll remind you, you certainly know this, but the 3 composers are usually grouped together and talked about together. Actually, I can stop sharing because I'll talk to you for a minute. The 3 composers, they're always grouped together as the bel canto school are Rossini, Donizetti, and Bellini, who were born in this order. But then they died in opposite order. So believe it or not, the latest to be born, which is Bellini, was the first one to die. Donizetti was the second one, and Rossini, who was the oldest one, outlived all of them. So that's life. But that also means that Rossini, who's the oldest one, was born in the classical period. And part of the reason that he stopped composing at a relatively young age is that he never wanted to make the transition into the Romanticism. Whereas Bellini, who's the last one to be born, was fully a Romantic. Donizetti, the guy in the middle, started studying and composing in the Rossinian style. And then as he was influenced by Bellini, he became more of a Romantic. So let me give you the slide again. Where did it go? Here. So his music has kind of a primitive dramatic power. By primitive, I mean direct, simple, not convoluted, which is really his hallmark. Even though Rossini, of course, had an amazing capacity to just churn out beautiful melodies, Donizetti's have a somewhat different feeling. In particular, he was an extrovert, and when he became a Romantic, his brand of Romanticism was hearty, as opposed to, for example, Bellini's, which tended to be more intellectual in some ways. The hallmarks of his style are catchy rhythms, which of course Rossini did as well. But I would be very surprised if you didn't come out of the theater humming his melodies. He loves dotted rhythms, and we will hear that in many of the numbers that I will play for you. A dotted rhythm, of course, is the alternation of short and long notes. So pam, pa pam, pa pam, pa pam. That's a dotted rhythm. So what does absolute regularity of periodization mean? Music, as you know, melodies come in phrases, in sentences, in groups. And the classical melody was very foursquare, very clearly with periods at clear intervals. Whereas the Romantic melody tends to be more free spinning, longer, not necessarily in building blocks that are the same shape. And Donizetti's melodies are there's nothing wrong with that. Chopin will do the same, but his melodies tend to have very, very regular periods. And I will show that to you. They tend to come in 4s or 8s, like Lego blocks. Well, in the good sense, they're much more varied than Lego blocks. And his harmony is primitive in the sense that it is not overly complex. It's direct, it's simple, you know where it's going. It never comes to the fore in the way that, so if you compare, for example, Italian and German music, Italian music tends to be melody dominated. So the vertical aspect, the harmonic aspect is a subsidiary to the voice, to the melody. It doesn't have to be a voice. Whereas, for example, in German music, if you think of Beethoven, Brahms, etc., the vertical aspect compared to melodic aspect is more is heavier, is more important. So it's like the balance of the two is different. Whereas in Italian music, you tend to have more attention paid for the melody. The harmony raises in importance in German music. And so Donizetti's harmony tends to be direct, simple, subservient to the melody, and in that sense, primitive. His melodies are miraculous. They have this sense of spontaneity, like, oh, I just thought of this, except it's perfect and he didn't just think of it. As I said, sometimes he's Rossinian, but with a much more romantic vitality, much more romantic feeling. His especially after he's influenced by Bellini and Romanticism, he includes much more pathos in his music and sentimentality, and we will see that also in this opera. One of the things that he learned from Bellini, and in a sense from later Rossini, is reducing embellishments and flourishes. That's what fioritura is. That is, it only exists when the drama, the story, justifies it. So it's subordinated to the expression of whatever emotion the character is feeling at that moment. And it disappears pretty obviously from the male voices first, other than in the ending cadenzas. So, for example, if you look at some of Rossini's operas, you have this kind of uniformity of expression. That is, whether the character is rich or poor, young or old, and whether the situation is happy or sad, you will have kind of the same type of flourishes and embellishments, which was right for that time. It's unfair to compare backwards. I'm not dissing Rossini. I love Rossini any day of the week, twice on weekends. But Donizetti and then Bellini first, tend to reserve these runs and trills to moments that are dramatically appropriate, which is part of the reason that you start having in operas perhaps more mad scenes or sleepwalking scenes, because since those are outside of reality, you don't have to justify the style. So you can have someone be like Lucia, right? She just killed someone, and yet she can have these flourishes and runs because she imagines she's at her wedding. She's out of her mind. The same with sleepwalking scenes. That's why composers love those very much. Because of his romantic side, in his comedies, you have a blend of humor and tenderness, both in Elixir d'Amore and in Don Pasquale. He also, like other composers, he's very responsive to the singers he has. As I said, again, they were pragmatists. If Verdi was composing an opera, he would compose his opera, and if your cast cannot do it, well, tough, you're going to have to hire someone else. Whereas Donizetti went, for example, to Paris, and he was assigned the 4 singers that were there, and so he composed Don Pasquale for those 4 singers. He used the conventional forms that he inherited from Rossini. For example, most of the arias being in the slow cavatina followed by a cabaletta model, which with Verdi will get completely dismantled. But he does it in a way that appears fresh because of his incipient romanticism. Another way to say this is that he progresses away from Rossini gradually, but not uniformly. So his achievement is less in any specific contribution to the post-Rossinian traditions, but it's less in that and more in a wide-ranging invention within the style. So, for example, his caballettas come in every possible variety. They're brilliant, or they're expressive, or they're sentimental, and everything in between. And so together with great comic humor, we will see that later in a little while, he has moments of real pathos and deep emotion. He obviously postulated the supremacy of the human voice, and so his melodies are vocally conceived, and that's how he gets both the humor and the pathos. So we will talk now about Elixir d'Amore. This is a poster. These things are called locandina in Italian. They are smaller than posters. They're, I don't know if you can see me at this point, probably not, but they're, I don't know how, in inches, maybe they are, I don't know, 16, 17 inches, in the length, and the width maybe 12 inches. And they are affixed outside theaters. And that's a tradition that goes all the way back to 100 years. People collect those. So Elixir d'Amore, composed in 1832. The images that I have are taken from different productions now, different theaters. It was commissioned by a theater that was called Teatro della Canobiana, which is now called Teatro Lirico Giorgio Gaber in Milan. Giorgio Gaber was one of my favorite singer-songwriters of the 70s and 80s. And he was given 14 days. Like, we start rehearsing in 2 weeks. And when I was saying that he could compose really fast, of those 14 days, he gave half to the librettist to write a libretto. So he had 7 days to compose a whole opera, which means deciding what's a recitative, what's an aria, what kind of aria, though they're probably all cavatina cabaletta, when to have the chorus, when not to have the chorus, composing all the melodies, thinking up all the harmonies, orchestrating it in 1 week. I'll let that sink in for a minute. The libretto was written by Felice Romani. He took the idea, or the libretto, from a French libretto that had been written by Scribe for an opera by Aubert called Le Filtre, the filter, which is another word for elixir or potion, and itself was taken from an Italian play called The Filter, Il Filtro. The censors always had to have the last word, and they had to approve of anything that went on stage before it went on stage. And in this case, the lead time was so short that they approved it at dress rehearsal, which means that there was a chance, not zero, that after they had done all the rehearsals, the censor said, nope, you have to change this. And so then, it was going to go down. It happened in history. I was telling the people I gave the lecture to a few hours ago that, for example, Haydn, the composer, the contemporary of Mozart, composed an opera for London in 1791, and the rehearsal started, and then the permission didn't come, and so it went unperformed until 1950. You heard that right. From 1791 to 1950. That was the first time it was seen. So anyway, in this case, things went well, fortunately. So the publisher, Ricordi, allowed Donizetti, told Donizetti, this, by the way, is a San Francisco production of 2011, maybe? Donizetti was allowed to put the dedication, or at least he was told that he could choose it. And so he wrote to Ricordi, since you're so kind as to let me choose the dedication of Elixir d'Amore, I am very grateful, and I want it to be to the fair sex of Milan. Who can better distill it, the elixir of love? Who can better dispense it? And then, of course, Ricordi offered, but then took it back. These are, again, photos from San Francisco. This is the cast of characters. And now we are, as I said, away from Rossini a bit here. And that means that his characters have also musical personality. And so this is what they sound like. Adina, who is a soprano and is a rich and capricious landlady, is flirtatious and she's tender in her music. Nemorino, the knight in shining armor, the tenor, he is a young and simple peasant, and he is in love with Adina, who's of course of a different class, and his music portrays simplicity and depth of feeling. He's the one who feels there. Then there is the quack, Dulcamara, this dude here. He is a buffo. A buffo is a kind of bass. All buffos are basses, but not all basses are buffos. It's a comic type of bass. And he's a wandering doctor or quack, really. And he's all garrulity. Then there is Belcore, the macho dude, this one. He is a bass, he's a sergeant of the army, and he exudes swaggering virility. And then there is a peasant girl, Giannetta, a soprano, who's a secondary role. When Donizetti got to Milan and met his singers, he said the following: I have a German prima donna, that her name was Clara Sabina Heinfetter. She was one of 6 singing sisters. A tenor who stammers, his name was Giambattista Genero, a buffo with the voice of a goat, Giuseppe Frizzolini, and a French basso who isn't worth much, who's actually a baritone. His name was Henri Bernard d'Abadie, and he's the one who will be the first Guillaume Tell, the last of Rossini's operas. And after he heard them sing, he wrote to his father in a letter, the tenor is fair, the prima donna has a beautiful voice, but remember she was German, only she knows what she's saying, and the buffo is a dog. So that was his cast when he set the album. So we actually have a testimony which I wanted to show you from a French composer, Hector Berlioz, who you probably have heard of. He also composed all sorts of music in a much more advanced style than we're speaking here. And he went, and this is what he wrote in his memoirs. Out of a sense of duty, I made myself go to hear the latest opera. Donizetti's L'Elisir d'Amore was being given at the Canobbiana. I found the theater full of people talking in normal voices with their backs to the stage. The singers, undeterred, gesticulated and yelled their lungs out in the strictest spirit of rivalry. At least I presumed they did, from their wide-open mouths. But the noise of the audience was such that no sound penetrated except the bass drum. People were gambling, eating supper in their boxes, etc., etc. Consequently, perceiving it was useless to expect to hear anything of the score, which was then new to me, I left. It appears that Italians do sometimes listen. I have been assured by several people that it is so. The fact remains that music to the Milanese, as to the Neapolitans, the Romans, the Florentines, and the Genoese, means arias, duets, trios well sung. Anything beyond that provokes only aversion or indifference. So that might be that he's talking about the reaction of the audience to the bass who was a goat. We don't have recordings. But one important thing here is that we see that Berlioz thought, and he had the chops to think about it, that for basically the Italian public, though Italy didn't exist until 1861, which is why he says Milanese, Neapolitans, Romans, etc., that for them, opera was still made up of a patchwork or a series, a chain of arias or closed numbers, cavatina, cabaletta, versus a more continuous scene, as you will have later on in the Romantic period. So let's go back to the Elixir d'Amore, and I will quickly read you the synopsis, and then we'll watch some scenes, as I promised. Synopsis of Act 1, and this is the production we're going to watch, actually. Nemorino, a poor peasant, is in love with Adina, a beautiful landowner who torments Nemorino with her indifference. When Nemorino hears Adina reading to her workers the story of Tristan and Isolde, he is convinced that a magic potion will gain Adina's love for him. Sergeant Belcore appears with his regiment and immediately proposes marriage to Adina. The traveling quack salesman Dulcamara arrives, selling his bottled cure-all to the townspeople. Nemorino innocently asks Dulcamara if he has anything like Isolde's love potion. Dulcamara says he does, selling Nemorino wine. Dulcamara tells Nemorino the potion will not take effect until the next day, when he will have left. Nemorino drinks it, feeling its effect immediately. Emboldened, Nemorino encounters Adina, and although she teases him mercilessly, the audience senses that the attraction just might be mutual. Nemorino's confidence that tomorrow he will win Adina by virtue of the elixir causes him to act indifferently towards her, which upsets her. She agrees to Belcore's suggestion that they marry immediately, as he has to ship off the next morning. Adina gauges Nemorino's reaction with despair, but Nemorino is panicked and cries out for Dr. Dulcamara to come to his aid. And that's the end of Act 1. Act 2. There are only two. And this is also from the production that we're going to watch. At Adina's wedding party, the notary arrives, but Adina delays the signing because she wants to wait for Nemorino. Meanwhile, Nemorino needs more elixir, but has no money. So Belcore suggests enlisting so he'll have the money he needs. When everybody except for Nemorino finds out that he's suddenly rich, thanks to the death of his uncle, Nemorino attributes everybody's attention to the copious amounts of elixir, wine, he has been imbibing thanks to army money. Adina, enlightened by Dulcamara, realizes Nemorino's sincerity, regrets teasing him, and falls for him. Nemorino, alone, pensive, reflects on a tear he saw in Adina's eye when he was ignoring her earlier, which convinces him that Adina loves him, and this aria we will listen to. Adina arrives and tells Nemorino he is loved, and she has bought his military contract. However, she turns to leave, and Nemorino then laments that if he is not loved, if the elixir has not worked, and the doctor has fooled him, then he might as well go off and die a soldier and returns the contract. Adina stops him and confesses that she loves him. Nemorino is ecstatic. Belcore returns, seeing the two in an embrace. Adina explains that she loves Nemorino. The sergeant tosses it off, noting that there are plenty of other women in the world. Dulcamara, his bags packed, adds that he will happily provide elixir for the sergeant's next conquest. A crowd has gathered by now, all agreeing that the elixir has done its job as they bid a fond farewell to the doctor. I will now show you a list of the most notable musical numbers. We will get to watch a number of them, not all of them, because there's only about, 40 minutes or so left, 45. So in Act 1, we have a number of them. We have the reading scene that where Adina is reading to her people, and it's a waltz with papa, with a refrain that's actually a mazurka. Then we have the arrival aria, that's what Cavatina di Sortita means, by Dulcamara, which is one of the great buffo arias with a torrent of patter. The patter is typical of buffo characters. It's like from musical theater, you know, a lot of repeated syllables with repeated notes. And it's set to some unctuous melodies for his irresistible fraud, and it has a trumpet call because there's the military there. Then there is the Dulcamara and Nemorino Cavatina Cabaletta pair, where you have the two different styles superimposed. So Rossinian patter for Dulcamara versus Nemorino's lyricism on top. And that's the scene here in the photo. Then we have Nemorino's lyrical Ai perigli della guerra, which is about enlisting in the army, with Belcore's patter in mock military fashion. Then there's the hilarious duet where Nemorino's drunk and Adina is wondering what's going on, and it's quite irresistible. Then we have the finale to Act 1, which we will also watch, which is kind of the declaration of love of Nemorino. He's passionate and lyrical. Belcore is comic and menacing and muttering, and Adina is sweet, responding with Nemorino's melody, which is what suggests that maybe she does care for him, but is a very comic finale. Then in Act 2, we have this barcarolle of Dulcamara and Adina, which is actually a musical joke, because if you call something a barcarolle, the rhythm should be the lilting rhythm of the boat song, which is tam pam 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 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3, and instead it's in 1 2 1 2, which is a militaristic rhythm, and this will return at the end of the opera. It happens twice. Then we have Nemorino and Belcore's duet, where there's a great contrast between the lyrical line of Nemorino and Belcore's patter again. Then we will absolutely watch, oops, where did it go? come back. Nemorino's Una furtiva lagrima, which is a gorgeous romanza. But what's interesting about this one is that it is probably the most famous and the most beautiful number in the entire opera, but it was originally not there. Donizetti insisted with the librettist that he wanted a sentimental song for Nemorino at that point, and Romani refused for quite a while, and then he had to cave in. And there is a alternation between major and minor keys when he realizes that he might have a chance at being loved, or he thinks he's being loved. It switches to major, then it goes to minor again because he's pondering, and then finally he says, well, there is hope here, and it's like someone opened the window and there's the shutters and there's the sun outside, when it becomes luminous and major. And then the final duet, which we will watch for sure, is where I told, if you remember from the synopsis, she says, I bought your contract. And she says, well, if you're leaving me, I'd rather die. And then she says, okay, I love you. Fine, you win. Okay, whatever. This kind of stormy declaration of love. So that is the end of the slides. And we are now going to go to the video. Unfortunately, it kicks me out every single time. So chances are I'm going to have to log in again, and you will have to put up with that. No, this is not. This is the right tab. And I have to pick a track before I can put the whole thing. So we're going to start from the reading scene with Adina reading to her workers, her friends. And notice how, I will point this out to you, but all the phrases come in fours, and it's a waltz, so it's papa, and it's accompanied by the strings and the winds. And the phrase, the musical phrase, the melody, has 4 parts to it. And this is the shape that Bellini usually gives to the melodies. There's a first phrase, which you can call A. Then there is a variation of that phrase, so A prime. Then there is a different phrase, B, and then another variation of A, so A double prime. And this is the shape of most of the bel canto melodies in this era. So here we go. See, it kicked me out again. Sorry about that. Here we go.
Benedette queste carte, e bizzarra l'avventura. Che ridi, fammi amare, i tuoi occhi la lettura, e la storia del Tristano, e una cronaca d'amore. Vorrei cantare questa mia d'amore. La crudele esatta, il bene Tristano
A prime, 8 bars each. 5, 7, and 8. Phrase B. Double prime. Now the refrain in the Mazurka. second stanza, back to waltz. Here we go. Pa, pa, pa. Here's the mazurka coming up. Okay, now we're going to go ahead. We're going to skip ahead to Dulcamara's arrival. As I said, it's one of the great bass arias. It has lots of dotted rhythms. Remember, I told you that he loves the dotted rhythms. I will point those out. I'm assuming you can hear me over the music. I hope you can. It's really funny. Read the text, but it's funny. He lists. He does all the patter when he lists all the things that his wine allegedly fixes, and he also gets stuck, like he says, for example, at the very beginning, oh, this the amazing results of this thing are known in the entire universe, and then he realizes there's nothing other than the universe, and so he goes, yeah, and other places too, and it goes back and forth with different speeds. And he has a full orchestral accompaniment. So his melody is not that interesting because there's a lot of declamation on one note, but notice also the trumpet call, which is quite something. So let's see if it lets me go there without, yes, udite, udite. Here we go.
Udite, o rustici, attenti, non fiatate. Io già suppongo e immagino che al par di me sappiate. Io sono quel gran medico, dottore enciclopedico, chiamato Dulcamara, la cui virtù preclara. E i portenti infiniti son noti all'universo altri siti. Benefatore degli uomini,
Oh, Gothic rhythms. Papà,
pochi
papà,
giorni
papà,
sgombero
papà,
io
papà.
spazzo gli spedali e la salute a vendere per tutto il mondo io ho. Compratela, per poco io ve la do. Compratela, per poco io ve la do. Compratela, per poco io ve la do. E questo l'odontalgico mirabile liquore dei topi e delle cimici possente distruttore, i cui certificati autentici bollati toccar vedere e leggere a ciaschedun farò. Per questo mio specifico, simpatico, prolifico, un onsequagenario e valetudinario, nonno di 10 bamboli ancora diventò, di 10 o 20 bamboli fin nonno diventò. Per questo tocche sana, in breve settimana, più d'una afflitta vedova di piangere cessò. O voi matrone rigide, ringioni bramate,
Serious.
le vostre rughe incomode, onesso cancellate, volete voi donzelle, bellissima aver la pelle, voi giovani galanti, per sempre avere amanti. Comprate il mio specifico, per pochi io ve lo do, per pochi io ve lo do, per pochi io ve lo do.
Quiet.
Da bravi giovinotti, da brave vedovette, comprate il mio specifico, per pochi io ve lo do. E nuovi paralitici,
Father.
spedisci, gli apopletici, gli asmatici, gli aspitici, gli asterici, i diabetici, pariscetti impanitidi, e scrofole rachitidi, e fino al mal di fegato che in moda diventò. Mirabile per i cinici, mirabile per il fegato, guarisce i paralitici, spedisce gli apopletici, comprate il mio specifico, poi vedove donzelle, o giovani galanti, per pochi io ve lo do. Avanti, vedove, avanti, bamboli, comprate il mio specifico, per pochi io ve lo do, sì, per pochi io ve lo do, sì, per pochi io ve lo do, sì, per pochi io ve lo do. L'ho portato per la posta da lontano 1000 miglia, mi direte quanto costa, quanto vale la bottiglia? 100 scuri? No, 30? No, 20? Nessuno si sgometti, per provarvi il mio contento, dissi amico accoglimento, io vi voglio buona gente, uno scudo regalar.
Uno scudo veramente più bravo non si può dar, non si può dar, non si può dar.
Ecco qua, così stupendo, si balsamico elisire, tutta Europa sa che io vendo niente men di 9 lire. Ma siccome pur palese io son nato nel paese, per 3 lire a voi lo cedo, sol 3 lire a voi richiedo. Gaetano, musica!
And here's the trumpet.
Così chiaro è come il sole, e ciascuno che lo vuole, uno scudo bello e netto in saccoccio faccio entrar. Uno scudo bello e netto in saccoccio faccio entrar, in saccoccio faccio entrar.
Si può porcere,
Ecco, venire, avanti, avanti. Adipati al caldo caldo affetto tra miracoli può far. Ani patria il caldo affetto gran miracoli può far. Gran miracoli può far. Gran miracoli può far. Di patria il dolce affetto gran miracoli può far. Di patria il dolce affetto gran miracoli può far. Sì, sì, può far.
Yeah, he was amazing. After that, there is the duet where Nemorino asks him, well, would you have as old as Elixir? And it's this Dulcamara's being kind of mock serious and saying, of course I do. And then he gets the wine and tells him how to use it, shake it a little, then down the gullet. For now, we'll skip it. If I have time at the back, I'll come back because I want to play now the duet. Actually, I'm going to start from before. The duet that I want to play is the one where he's drunk. But I will start it before that, where he says in the recitative, let her be mean, I have a secret. Caro Elixir, eccolo qua. So we'll start here.
Esulti pur la Barbara, per poco alle mie pene, domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà la Barbara, domani m'amerà, sì m'amerà. Esulti la esulti pur la Barbara, per poco alle mie pene, per poco alle mie pene, domani avranno termine, domani s'amerà, domani sì, 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 domani m'amerà la perfida. Sì, sì, sì,
And now they argue. Remember that he's drunk.
la 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 la.
ver la metto in opera, così per una prova. Dimenticarvi io spero. Si estinguerà fra poco. Ancora un giorno solo e il cuore guarirà.
Davvero, me lo consola, ma pure si vedrà.
Un giorno solo.
Now this was the slow part, the cavatina, and now we get the cabaletta, the fast part.
E tutti pur la barbara, oh voi le mie pene. Domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà. Esulti pur la barbara, esulti pur la barbara, domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà. Sì, sì, che m'amerà, sì, sì, che m'amerà. Un giorno solo. Sì, sì, esulti pur la barbara, per poco alle mie pene. Domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà. Esulti pur la barbara, esulti pur la barbara, per poco le mie pene. Domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà. Domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà.
Sorry, they're gone for a while. And after this, of course, because he is indifferent to her, she agrees to marry Belcore the next day. And so we're going to go to the finale of Act 1, where he tries to convince her, please not to get married until the next day. And he knows why. So that's Adina Credimi. There we go. Very serious, lyrical, and passionate.
Non puoi sposarlo, te ne assicuro. Aspetta ancora un giorno solo, un breve giorno. Io so perché Romanio cara, ne avresti pena e ne vorresti al par di me. Domani forse ne avresti pena e ne vorresti al par.
Now we'll hear Belcore's menacing buffo.
Il te ringrazia, babbuino, che matto t'ho preso, tu sei dal vino. Ti avrei strozzato, ridotto in brani, se in questo istante tu fossi in te. Il figlio tempo, apre le mie mani, va via buffone, ti ascolti a me. Va via buffone, ti ascolti a me.
Now we have the three styles, lyrical, passionate, and buffo. And it'll be a while before they get all of that out of their chest. So I'm going to stop it here. It's a teaser. Go to the opera and you can see the whole thing. I want to briefly play an example of a choral scene because this is it's film music. It's the moment where everybody, well, actually the women in the group find out that Nemorino's uncle is dead, and so Nemorino is rich. But there is all the suspense in the music, the flutes and the oboes and the clarinets, and then the strings are all this very soft movement, suggesting suspense. And it's Giannina, the servant girl, together with the women of the chorus. Saria possibile. And of course, he doesn't know. I don't know how they know. No, don't disappear. Why am I not seeing it? Here it is. Gossip.
Possibilissimo. Probabile. Probabilissimo. Non pensavo che ti volesse che non fate strepito. Non fate strepito. Parlate piano. Non anco spargere, si può l'arcana, e noto solo, ai merce ai volo, che in confidenza la detto il merce al volo, l'ha detto a te, sarà bellissimo, oh bella festa. Sarà bellissimo, sarà bellissimo, oh bella festa, oh bella festa. Sappiate dunque che l'altro dì Nemorino, lo zio, morì. Già giovinotto lasciato il io cospicuo, immensa eredità. Piano per carità, non deve dirsi, si dirà, non deve dirsi, si dirà, non si dirà, non si dirà.
All right, and there's a bit more of that. And now we're going to go to the aria that I was mentioning to you that was added because Donizetti knew what he needed. And it was, of course, the most famous aria. And this is Matteo Polenzani being lyrical. And it is accompanied by the solo bassoon, which is a double reed instrument. And the bassoon as a double reed instrument really suggests pathos, emotion, as does the oboe. And then there's a harp accompaniment imitating kind of a guitar as if he were accompanying himself. And the music is also four square, the melody. It's in groups of 4 bars. You can count or you can trust me. One, two, two, and that makes 4, and then another 4. It's in minor, it starts now. Uh-oh. Maybe. Second stanza. Oh. It goes into major again. Yep, he was good. And now we're gonna skip ahead to the where she says, okay, here's your contract, I've bought your freedom. And he goes, well, I can go die if you're not gonna release. This.
Si spiega che mi lasciate
Watch out.
null'altro a dirmi avete
Now he's rage.
ben tenete
Rage in the music. Form.
non sono amato voglio morir soldato poiché non sono amato voglio morir soldato non va per me di pace
Alright,
se
rhythm.
mi ingannò il dottor se mi ingannò il dottor io vo morir soldato se mi ingannò il dottor
Sempre si vede
And there we go.
Io umani sì oh gioia inesprimibile umani non mi ingannò il dottor oh gioia inesprimibile
Yeah.
Oh, gioia!
Okay, then she apologizes for her harshness, and all is well that ends well. So I've already run out of time. Sorry I went over, but here I'm back and I'm going to take some of your questions. And let's see. Helen asks, why does Adina treat Nemorino the way she does? Well, as Michael Tippett said, there's only one plot to comic opera. It's the obstacles to an eventual happy marriage. So she has to do that because then otherwise there would be no plot. The story is that she is a noble woman, a landowner, and he's a poor dude. So she cannot love him because they're from different classes. The fact that she ends up singing his melody tells us that he's actually falling for him, but it's a marriage that is not going to happen until it happens. So that's why there's a plot, a comic opera plot. You also ask about the musical joke that I mentioned. The thing is, if you say that something is something and then you don't give it, that's why it's a musical joke. In other words, if the score says this is a barcarolle, that is, barcarolle means a boat song. A boat song has always the lilting rhythm of the waves. So pam, 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 pam. If instead you say it's a barcarolle, but you have pam, 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 it's a joke because it's not, it's like the opposite of a barcarolle. And anybody who knows what a barcarolle is will laugh. So it's just kind of an inside joke. But it's also using the musical form for hilarity. Those of you who are familiar with the Barbara of Seville, you know that Rossini does that too in the eloping scene when they are saying, well, we have to leave because they climb to the ladder in the window. And then because musical convention requires the cabaletta to be sung twice, they sing it twice, and by the time they're done singing it twice, the ladder has been taken away. And so it's hilarious because they keep saying, we need to go, but it's a cabaletta that needs to be sung twice. And so they say it, but they don't do it. Let's see if we have questions from, well, Helen seems to be the only one who's asking questions unless I'm misreading it. So I'll keep on going with your questions. Why didn't Donizetti's librettist want to write that aria? Well, because he felt that his work was what it was, the integrity of the work. He didn't understand about music. Donizetti is the one who understood about music. And Donizetti knew that at that point, he needed to have something with more pathos because, again, he was no longer pure classicist. But as far as Romani was concerned, everything that there was to be was there. In fact, if you think about the text of Una furtiva lagrima, it is not necessary to the plot, but it is necessary for us to understand the state of mind of Nemorino, where he's going back and forth between believing what he thinks he saw and reality. Do the townspeople know that she loves him back? I can't tell. I don't know. I think it doesn't say in the opera. So yeah, you're right that you can tell that when you see people that love each other, but Donizetti doesn't tell us if that's the case with the townspeople. It bothered you that Nemorino gets hit by that guy. Well, why is he mean? Because he's his rival. So Nemorino is taking away the woman that Belcore wanted to marry. So it's just testosterone jealousy, basically. And then the last one, do you think that they will live happily ever after? Yes, I think so. He's portrayed as a dunce just because he's falling head over heels in his love for Adina, but obviously this is an operatic portrayal. I think the idea is that it's a happily ever after. Otherwise, it would be a tragic opera, not a comic opera. I don't see any other questions. I don't know if it's time. Well, actually, we may have run out of time altogether. I don't know.
I think we might have time for maybe a little bit more. I was wondering, would you be willing to speak to how the cultural obsession with Una Fortigra Lagrima developed, like how that's become such an iconic tenor aria?
Well, yeah, it's because if you think of all the other numbers that I've played, for example, none of them has the pathos and the emotion that aria has. And this is the transition period between classical and romantic. And so there weren't that many that were, well, besides the fact that it's beautiful, but there wasn't that much repertoire at that point that was so full of pathos and emotion. And so, it's short, it has some practical reasons, like there's no chorus intervention, so you don't have to worry about that. A lot of arias have chorus intervention, which you have to kind of surgically excise. And it is still classical enough that it is in periods that are very regular, and so it's also very pleasant to sing, and it's just gorgeous. Plus, it doesn't call for a huge orchestra. You really only need the bassoon. So there are a number of reasons. The main reason, it's the beauty of this melody full of pathos at a time when that was starting to be the thing.
That makes sense. Thank you. Maybe we have time for one more. Can you help us understand the significance of Nemorino's inheritance at the end of the opera? Like, why is that important to the plot? Why does he need to be wealthy?
Well, because he finally can marry Adina. He's in the same class.
Oh.
The reason it couldn't happen is because she's a landowner and he's a peasant. But then, there's always the rich uncle who could, kicks the bucket. And so now they belong to the same class because he's a millionaire, as they say, and she's a landowner, so they can actually marry.
Perfect. That makes sense.
Class division was still when the opera is supposed to have happened, which was some kind of pastoral past. You couldn't marry someone of a different class that way, or at least it would have been kind of a scandal. But now it's perfectly legitimate. He's got the money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And I think maybe we wrap up the Q&A and transition to just some closing remarks. But thank you so much for sharing with us. That was really interesting.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, I'll hand things off to Peggy for some announcements.
Oh, thank you, Alexandra. That was wonderful. And it's such a beautiful opera. I don't think I could ever tire of it. So thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And hopefully we can all get to the Opera House to see this wonderful opera. But if you can't, luckily, as you know, San Francisco Opera live streams each opera. And the live stream will be Sunday, November 26th at 2 p.m., $27.50. Register online at San Francisco Opera. And we will be back in May for the Magic Flute for the preview. So hopefully we will remind you all and that we'll see you then. And just it's nice to know that our San Francisco Opera Guild has our wonderful school program. And this year we're taking the Elixir of Love to all the schools. And the children love it. It's a wonderful experience for them. And this is throughout the Bay Area. So thank you all who have supported this program. And looking forward to seeing you at the Opera House and for the summer programming for the Magic Flute. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.
Good night.